Most business models don't actually stop working because the market shifted or there's an evolution happening. They stop working because the identity that built them has expired. You've evolved beyond that. And oftentimes your business model, your current level of success is a mirror of the identity you were in when you built it. And when that model expires, you actually stall out or feel that burning need to pivot. You are listening to Amplify Your Success Podcast, episode 472. And today I'm exploring the invisible identity factors that are currently defining your level of success. You ready for this? Let's get started. Welcome to the Amplify Your Success Podcast. Get ready to ramp up your revenue, amplify your impact, and make your mark in the world. This is the show for experts, thought leaders, and service professionals who want to shatter their limits and achieve that next level. You're going to find out from other experts and influencers how they made it. Now, let's get amplified. Hello there and welcome to 2026. It's Melanie Benson, Authority Amplifier and the founder of the Unignorable Expert Program. And today, let's explore what it means to get trapped in an identity model, an identity business model that's not allowing you to take your business where it needs to go and to earn the income and to have that next level visibility and all the things that go with it. Now, if you caught my year-end episode, 471, you know I talked a lot about the shifts that I made in this last year, and one of them was really recognizing the hold that my identity has had over what I would allow myself to see as possible. I was trained in neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis early on in my trajectory, and it served me really, really well, but that doesn't mean that we don't have to do our own work. And so I want to explore what I've been working with my clients inside of Rising Tide Leaders and the current mastermind that I've been running, and how it's really bringing a lot of light bulbs to the front of the conversation of why we have a vision that we cannot fulfill or we don't actually take action on. Our identity is a very significant part of the kind of the model of what we see as possible. But one of the interesting things is it affects the business model that we say yes to. It affects the visibility opportunities that we say yes to or that we create. Our identity is literally our paradigm, but it's so deeply unconscious, we don't oftentimes realize it. We don't realize what's influencing and shaping the reality that we're in. So let's talk a little bit about the identity business model trap that I see a lot of people, including me, falling prey to. And this is where you have to look at the business model that you've currently created has been heavily influenced by who you've learned from, what you're surrounded by, maybe if you're lucky, your human design and what you're actually uniquely designed to do on this planet, but it's also influenced and inspired by the identity of what you hold as you and your role here on this planet to do the work that you do. And business models don't stop working because the market changes. It stops working because your identity, the one that you shaped that business model, is out of sync with what the market wants, what you want, and what energetically has the frequency to expand. So when our business model starts to expire, and your business model operates a lot like a mirror. So it mirrors the identity of where you were and what you believed in and what you saw yourself as when you built it. And I personally can deeply relate to this because I personally have become aware recently of how a lot of the business models that I've moved myself into over the years were actually formed at the time when my identity was activated or formed around that particular business model. And every big shift I've been through was because my identity started to evolve and reshape itself. So our business model is, interestingly enough, what we get known for, what we get rewarded for, and what we get validated for at that version of our evolution and what we believe about ourselves. So over time, our model, the business model we're choosing, for some people, stops becoming a choice and starts becoming synchronistic with who we believe we are. And I have seen this over and over and over again, where people hold on to a particular version of their business until it's damaging them, because their identity was so rooted in what they'd created, what they'd invested in, what they'd built, that founder energy, and they couldn't let it go. I have seen founders of massively successful companies literally unconsciously blow up the business because it didn't really fit where they wanted to go, but they didn't understand that their identity was acting like an anchor holding it in place. So when the business model or the work that you're doing is starting to feel really heavy, and maybe delivering it feels bittersweet, like there's parts of it that you like, but it feels constrained or out of sync, and or you're resenting it, and your growth starts to feel forced, and maybe growing it is requiring way more effort than it should, it's a really clear picture that it's time to evaluate the identity that you built that from and the identity of what's required of you as you claim whatever this next level is. Because your identity can become a frequency prison, if you will, when you're locked in and you're literally like creating from that old frequency, even though it's not congruent with where your vision wants to go. It's congruent with what you believe is congruent with yourself. And sometimes it's just the energy of the old business model is holding you hostage, and sometimes it's the beliefs and the decisions and the ideology that's around it. And again, it's not because it's wrong. I think it's important to recognize that you completed this journey. And this was so important for me to recognize because as I enter into this new year, I decided to let some things go that I worked really, really hard on. I invested a lot of time and money to build. But I was building it out of a frequency that was like before the pandemic even occurred. And it was the vision of what I believed I needed to execute on. It was an identity that I was holding on to. And that identity was formed in a place in my life that really doesn't serve me anymore. And so rather than seeing this as failure, like this is failing to work, this is an opportunity to say, okay, I completed the integration of what I needed from that. And now it's time to allow this next unfolding. So I want to talk just a little bit more about frequency, because frequency is multi-layered. And this is really important to understand. Your business model, when it becomes your identity, it starts to rewire your nervous system. Now, I'm not saying that we don't need to identify with the business that we're creating. What I'm saying is that when we get overly attached to the model that we're building, we integrate that into our DNA. And so we might start to say things like, I am a community leader, or I am a coach, or I am a service provider that does XYZ, right? And we start to recognize that the identity of that role and the identity of the business model where we deliver from, we are locking in what we believe is possible. I have worked with some brilliant people over these 25 years. And what I've noticed is people who are overly attached in that frequency of the identity of like, well, this is what accountants do, or this is what coaches do, or this is what I do as a therapist, right? When you are overly anchored into that, it limits what you can activate and create from this new identity. So we literally stall our evolution because we're conflicted or frustrated about what we believe is possible. So we don't just do business from the model. We don't just say, oh, I'm going to have a membership, or I'm going to, I'm going to do services, or I'm going to do this hybrid coaching mastermind model, right? Like, that's a model. But when it's wrapped into our identity and we overly associate with it, we start to have it be our compass for every decision we make. So here's an example. I early on trained as a coach. I got a certification. I went through several trainings to really refine my coaching skills. And I identified as a coach for a very, very long time. I still do on some levels. Like I know that is one of my superpowers. And I made a lot of decisions from the mental framework called I am a coach. Because if I am a coach, then this is what's okay and this is what wasn't okay. Because part of it was my training, part of it was my identity, and part of it was what I believed was possible inside the framework of being a coach. And when I shifted that and I thought, what if actually I'm a multiple six-figure business owner and I am making a huge impact with the things that I know how to do that other people don't know how to do and turn to me for growing opportunities around. What if I create a business that delivers that? What would that look like? And instead of being locked into I'm a coach, I started to see the world through the lens of what can I do that would be outside of that box and allows me to scale my business. So I shifted my identity out of coach into I'm a multiple six-figure business. There was a time where it's like I'm a seven-figure business. What is the model that allows me to do what I do best, make a great impact, and make that scalable revenue? Then I recently became aware that I had a very subtle frequency running called online business. And if you run an online business, and if you've been in this market for a long time, you may deeply relate to this. I was indoctrinated into the world of marketing through the lens of online business, through direct response marketing, through all of these frameworks that at the time were very popular and very successful. And as I grew, I was always holding on to this frequency of how does it fit inside the world of being an online business owner? And it was like this lens, this colored lens that I saw every single decision through. And one of the explorations I had going through my year-end worksheet in the inquiry of like, what did I learn? What am I integrating? What am I calling in next as we shed that snakeskin year of 2025 was, what belief systems am I holding on to that is coloring the lens in which I make every decision from? All of a sudden it went, boom. What if I no longer operate like an online business owner? What would I do differently? Now, it doesn't mean I blow that up and I never use any of the insights from it. But what it means is if I am living inside the identity of I am an online business and I use that framework, that paradigm, what am I limiting in terms of what's possible? So it's an interesting question to ask yourself. What lens, what identity, what model are you holding on to because it's worked, because you were indoctrinated into it, because it served you really well for a really long time, but now it is no longer serving you? Let's take an identity that doesn't have anything to do with business, but let's take the identity of being married. I know particularly women and some men who've acknowledged that when they'd been married for a really, really long time, and then that marriage ended, it took them a long time to unravel the identity of, I'm not married anymore, and to find a new identity of the version of them that they wanted to be. And it's a lot like that in business. When you have something, whether it's working or not, whether it's making you happy or not, but you have integrated it into your beingness, it holds you in that paradigm. And when that's not existing anymore, or it's time to evolve, or it's time to up-level the frequency, You have to release the identity you've been holding on to, sometimes before you can access the identity of what's requiring of you next. So I want to talk about some of the signs that you've outgrown this identity. And one is just the energy of feeling claustrophobic, stuck, or resentful in a model that quote unquote works. It works. It's okay. You're getting okay results. But you are maybe feeling boxed in by some expectations. And maybe you committed to something that you no longer want to do. Or it's not really lighting your fire anymore and you're in that autopilot of delivering it. I certainly went through this with some of the programs that I've had over the years. Do you feel constrained by messaging that needs to kind of be in place around the business model you're in, but it feels so out of sync with what lights you up or what you feel is possible? And one telltale sign is when you have to be more accessible than you want to be. Or you're on this content treadmill and you're like, I don't want to do this kind of content anymore. So what if it's not about burnout, but that identity is compressed into a box that doesn't serve you where you're going next? You find that your evolution, like what you're being called to, has outpaced the structure that you're in right now. You're craving deeper conversations. Maybe you want, or you can see that it's possible that you could have fewer high-level clients, but you're not really clear how to get there from where you are today. And so there's where you think you could be going, this little signal of this is possible, but you feel very trapped in a structure that's demanding you. I had a client one time who was really clear about the vision of where they were going, but where they were literally was such a time trap that they had no time to create the space to activate what was becoming. And so the questions became, what would have to happen for you to create some space? Like, are you willing to let go of something in the current delivery? Are you willing to sacrifice some current revenue for the future expansion of you and your vision in this planet, right? So you start to have to ask yourself new questions about what are you willing to do? And one of those questions is, what is the identity of the version of you that already has this? And that can be very liberating. When you allow the structure that you're in to kind of keep you locked in, it's going to create a lot of internal friction. And I have watched people, and I think I did this back in 2009 without realizing what was happening. Like, I literally think I sabotaged a business. And I know a lot of people that kind of unconsciously blow up their business because they're operating it from an old identity frequency that can't go where they're going next. Another sign is visibility feels draining instead of expansive. And here's the key reason why. You don't want to grow what you have. And there's a part of you that knows that if you grow it, you're going to be stuck in more of what you don't want. So you pull back from being more visible, whether it's conscious or unconscious. And it's not because you're afraid of being seen, but because you don't really want to be more visible in this version, or you don't want to grow more of what you have right now, but you don't have clarity and you haven't fully activated this next evolution. I also see that it's not like a pause, but I think as human beings, there's this intrinsic drama that we get into where when something has stopped working, we create some drama around it. It's almost like there's this natural instinct to muddle up what no longer works so that you can justify leaving it. What if you simply just declared what you're stepping into? The sign is you are noticing that you're maybe spending a lot of time talking about it. You're feeling a lot of confusion. Maybe you're not taking action on things that you used to take action on. You're letting some things die off, and you're maybe feeling a little guilt around that. Or simply you're like, oh my God, I spent a fortune building this thing and there's so much inner angst about it. What if you just let it go? So notice like the tendency to kind of over process that you're letting this go instead of just declaring, I claim this. I am this. I'm willing to be ready for this. So it's not that you're failing at something. It's that identity shift is occurring inside of you. You're ready to evolve. There's more that a different kind of work or an evolution that's occurring. And you can literally just allow it to release instead of those old patterns of holding on, trying to secure or fix things that don't need to be fixed. They just need to be released. And the last one, and I think this is one of the bigger ones, and this is what activated for me towards the end of 2026, is when you're noticing that it's not enough to be part of the conversations, to be part of the experiences, because you're feeling called to lead. You're feeling called to make a huge, significant impact. And so you might feel called to, or feeling that pull towards leading and kind of disrupting with bolder conversations, maybe standing apart from the mythology and the perpetuated content that just gets created over and over and over again that just becomes noise. You want to transform. You want to activate and you want to disrupt. And it doesn't may or may not make total sense, but you're feeling it. And you're probably feeling a pull towards creating spaces to be the leader, where you're the one that's owning the conversation, owning the platform, owning the event, instead of just waiting for invitations to join. You're like, no, it's time for me to lead. I'm going to ignite this. And that takes me to the third sign. I think when you're feeling called to lead, you're probably feeling like, this is so much bigger than I know how to do, but I know I need to do it. And I think part of this is you are probably igniting a movement instead of just building an audience. And building an audience is great, don't get me wrong. But when you're feeling called to lead, you know it's so much bigger. You're standing for something. You're igniting and inspiring others to join you in it. That's leadership. And that old identity that has been maybe playing it safe and built on an older version of you, where it's about being helpful or proving your worth, being overly available, or you're really committed to being liked, you are not going to be able to hold on to that identity where you're going next. And so making peace with this and inviting in clarity, like, what is the version of me? What's the identity of the version who is confident and fully embracing my role as a leader or an inspirer or whatever the word is that resonates for you? That's who can hold the level of impact and the evolution that you're in. So this is where I'm going to spend a lot of time, both here and in my private podcast, becoming unignorable. Because when we are calling in this level of activation, we have to start doing what I call identity mapping. So we have to map ourselves from the identity that you've been in that has served you really well up to now, that had a purpose, but is also now acting like an anchor, into the identity of the version of you that already has this evolution and can hold it, that has the capacity for it, and has confidence in it. It's not about perfection. It's about rewiring your nervous system, your belief system, your operating system, and the identity of what you believe about yourself, so that that next level of success occurs. So I am going to do a whole episode on identity mapping, because this is a big part of what I'm realizing I'm doing with my clients now, with myself. And it's beautiful. It's powerful. It's exciting. And it's expansive. And it's actually not that hard. The hardest part is when you are resisting the evolution, because you're still overly attached to the identity of what's been safe up to now. And so that's just a different body of work to create an awareness like, okay, I'm attached to this version of me. I'm attached to the identity here. There's safety here. And there's a piece I need to complete so that I can release it. Maybe I'll do an episode on that too. So if you recognize it's time to upgrade your identity so that your business model can expand, so that your visibility can expand, so that your vision can expand, and this is really speaking to you, and you're looking for a guide, reach out. Let's have a chat. I will share my unignorable framework in the show notes, because I think that's a really, really powerful place to start. But if you're really ready to do the identity work, let's talk. Thanks for tuning in today, Amplifier. We're going to keep this conversation going, and I want to hear from you how you're going to amplify your authority and make a greater impact. Before you go, please take a minute to give our show and our guests some love over on your favorite podcasting platform. Subscribe, rate, and review. Leave your full name, and I'll spotlight you and your authority on social media.